resume debate on P94. Does any other member wish to speak?
Sir.
Senator Green.
Thank you, sir. And a number of points that I want to cover, sir. But before doing so, this is only the second time, just to remind members that made comments about the Chief Minister, this is only the second time since I've been Deputy Chief Minister that I've had to cover for the Chief Minister. And he is away, sir, on very important business. Meeting with European ministers, fighting our corner over the Brexit stuff, sir. And if you're not at the table, you get things done to you. So the Chief Minister always makes efforts to be here. But on this occasion, if he hadn't have gone, the meeting would have gone ahead without us. And I think it's important that he was there. So, but I think in the absence of the Chief Minister, sir, I do need to say a few words. And I do understand the frustrations that have been expressed today. I don't agree with all that has been said, far from it. But I do agree that as ministers we do need to try hard to include states members in how we formulate policy and how we make decisions. And I think it was Senator Routier that talked about some of those options. So I'm sure the Constable of St John's didn't intend to mislead the Assembly. But he said that this morning that P108, lodged by the Minister for External Relations, was late. It was not late, sir. The Minister merely asked that it be brought up the order paper today. It was not late. The paper, the Proposition 110 on the hospital, was not late. It will be debated tomorrow. It's been lodged for the requisite 8 weeks, sir. So you need to get, the facts need to be correct, sir. And I'm sure the Constable didn't intend to mislead the Assembly, but I couldn't let that go unchallenged, sir. So I've certainly learnt a lot about including states members as you work through policy. I learnt a lot from the deliberations, and I think we need to have a more formal arrangement for the future. But I learnt a lot on the deliberations on the new hospital. So it's been really hard, and I believe that we have made good progress on building a close relationship on understanding those issues. And that's the debate on the new hospital is for tomorrow, sir. But I just use that as an example where many, many states members gave up time to be involved in workshops, and I'm very grateful for that. I know we need to do more. We want to do more. And credit is due, I think, also to the Minister of the DFI, sir, for the workshops that he's run. But we need something more formal, where people know that they're going to be heard. So this positive way of going about things, this constructive way of going about things, needs improvement, but it's a start. The proposition asks the public if they want to continue with or replace the Minister of Government. But with what? And others have said this. What are we going to replace it with? So we're here to represent the public, to explain to them why we should be elected, which we do at the hustings, and then we represent them. We should not undertake referendums lightly, and it should only be on the most important matters, and for me, only when you give a positive choice, the ability to vote for something. So in the case of the constables, and I do enjoy when Deputy Martin has a pop at me, sir, because she's so good at it, and I really do. I do enjoy her being there because she's so passionate and really believes in what she says, but she's also, as I say, very good at it, sir. But the referendum on the constables, which if I remember correctly was my amendment to some proposition that we had at the time about the membership of the Assembly, that referendum was that, sir. It was about who should be members of the Assembly. It was not about the machinery of government, which is what we're talking about today. So the proposition doesn't give the public something to vote for. It only gives them something to vote against. Following the Brexit vote, and as a small jurisdiction completing for investment, and as we try to improve our economy, and as we try to develop public services, I think this proposition is extremely unhelpful. And here I'm glad to see Deputy Mezek sat in his seat, sir, because he read out a catalogue of things that the government has done wrong. Well, I've got a catalogue of things that the government has done right, sir. Much improved social housing, £250 million going into improved social housing. Ask the people at Pomdor Farm what they think about that. At Lascay, at La Collette High Rise, those in the new houses at Lascende. That's something the government has done, sir. Much improved social housing. Improvement and long way to go yet in children's services. Improvement and still more to do in mental health services. Bus passes for the disabled. A rent-safe system, sir. Rental deposit schemes. A long-term care scheme that's the envy of everybody I speak to when I speak to other health ministers, that protects the assets of hard-working, ordinary people. £40 million new investment in going into the health service. And that's just off the top of my head, sir. And so we were the only government that foresaw, well, didn't foresee, but certainly prepared for Brexit. The comments I have received from ministers elsewhere, and I don't travel widely, sir, I'm nearly always in Jersey, but the comments I have received and the people that have plagiarised the work that was done by Senator Balash, Senator Oza, and the Chief Minister show that we were prepared in case it went the way we didn't think it went. That's what this government's doing, sir. Let me just look back and take the rose-tinted glasses off on the way it was. Well, I was brought up in a house with no electricity, with no water. My bedroom was on the landing. My father cut the windowsill out to get the bed in. We shared a toilet down the lane with 7 other cottages, about 15 people using the same toilet, where there was no unemployment benefit, where there was no personal care component, where you had to pay the full price of medicine. That's the Jersey I remember under the old system, and that has changed. So let us think about the things that are positive. So if you go around telling people everything's bad, eventually they believe it. So things are hard for some people, sir. I know they're very hard for some people. And some of that is as a result of the economic downturn in America that we all suffer from. But people still want to come and live here. This is a good place to live, and we've got safety nets for those that struggle. So our society is ageing. We need new infrastructure. We need more housing still, and the minister's working on that. We need to preserve our environment. We need to prepare for climate change. We need to reform our health service and improve our educational performance. I could go on. There's lots more that I could talk about, but I believe our focus should be on these things and not again on ourselves. And so there used to be, I think, a correspondent in the Jersey Evening Post years ago called Hardbencher, and she always used to speak to her man in the square. Well, I spoke to my man in the square this morning as I walked across, and he had a right to use the term pop. You're talking about yourselves again. That was what he said. With all the things that we need to do in this island, you're talking about yourself again. So do we really need to spend the next term in a root and branch exercise, the next term of office, in a root and branch exercise on how to introduce a new form of government, which we've no idea what it might look like yet, and having a public vote on something that we don't know whether we can even achieve it? No, sir, we need to make progress. This Assembly needs to make progress on the things that have been raised today. We need to find ways of combining the best bits of ministerial government, the decisiveness, the ability to coordinate across Council of Ministers' table, with more inclusiveness and transparency. And there is no doubt that we must make use of that talent, everybody's talent, that Deputy Martin referred. But what we should not do is throw Jersey into the unknown. We should not have that referendum on whether to replace ministerial government, and we have no consensus, as I said before, on what we should replace it with. What should we replace the Council of Ministers? Where does the scrutiny function fit in? None of that is clear, sir. We should not jeopardise what is well understood, although it's fairly new, well understood form of government when we arguably need it the most. ministerial government was brought in for a very good reason. It was brought in to be more decisive, increasing global and competitive, in a increasingly globalised and competitive and quick-moving world. This is needed more than ever. To be clear, though, this debate is not about what form of government we should have. This debate is whether we should have a referendum or not. It asks the public if we should continue with the system we have. I cannot see how this sort of referendum helps Jersey. I simply cannot see. What I can agree with the Deputy, and where I think she is right, we need to be more inclusive, as I've said before. And that is why the Chief Minister supported Deputy Martin's proposition on the election of assistant ministers earlier this year. Accepting the principle, agreeing to changes alongside other changes to include more states members in decision making, and to bring back a proposal to the Assembly following that engagement. So this work, as Senator Rutia said, is underway, and I expect members to be consulted soon. So as the Chief Minister said in his comment at the time of the change in the assistant ministers, the change of system of government is fundamental, and we must find practical ways that evolve for years to come. I, for one, look forward to that work. But as for this proposition, I believe it simply turns the problem over to the public and the next Assembly. We shouldn't do that. We should solve it now. We have important challenges ahead. We must work together. The more we listen to each other, the better we will be able to face challenges for the benefit of islanders. This means recognising the good in our system as well as the bad, but not throwing it all out and starting again. That's not good for Jersey at this time or any time. So it is often said to be careful what you wish for. But on this occasion, we don't even know what the Deputy wishes for, clearly. Have we not learned the lessons of piecemeal change? So whilst there is much of what we said I can agree with, I urge members not to support this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Any other members wish to speak?
Sir.
Deputy Musson.
Thank you, sir. And listening to the speeches of various members today, of course, as with all things, I think there's been a selective view of history. Again, Deputy Martin isn't necessarily asking for a revert back to the committee system, though, on that one point. What is significantly different between that system and this system, and I remember Deputy de Hamel often saying it, is that the States Assembly was the supreme decision-making body, which is very different to what we have now. It gave states members at the time much more ability than they have now, and Deputy Martin is absolutely right. In our ministerial system, a lot of the decisions are a fait accompli. By the time scrutiny get to look at them, either far too much money has been spent on consultants for states members to be able to influence anything, or the pressure is so incredibly high, like with the depositor compensation scheme, things have to be done yesterday, and therefore it actually doesn't give the ability of scrutiny to be able to function properly. No one else has mentioned that yet, though, have they? What I would also say is that today, it's a different age. We have social media. We actually have a very different tone in our media itself, kind of the more tabloid attitude towards the news, which actually does change the perception of politicians and of government as a whole. And that's very different to what we had in the past. And that does change people's perception of the States Assembly. Whether that means that necessarily they're better informed or not, it's certainly a mixture. Sometimes I often feel that there's a lot of information which I'm aware of, which perhaps the general public aren't aware of. And again, even today I had to refer to someone who said if you just a quick Google search, you would actually find this information quite readily. So there's that to bear in mind as well. We had some discussion over kind of the Clothier report as well. But of course, another thing that hasn't been mentioned is that within that report, which wasn't supposed to be cherry-picked, was also the establishment of a public sector's ombudsman. Now, why was that? That was to allow states members the ability to focus on the strategic issues affecting the island, to do away with some of the more minutiae work that they do within departments, in order to allow the reduction of membership within this assembly. But no one ever speaks about that, do they? That's another one that gets forgotten. And also looking at this kind of in making members more inclusive and perhaps going back to what was proposed some time ago, the ministerial board system, whereby you allow members of a scrutiny to be part of the executive. Well, I'll tell members, and I've sat on a review looking at this aspect, if that happens, you will kill the scrutiny process. Now, that may not be a bad thing if we have a different form of government, and this is what Deputy Martin is saying. Actually, let's look at ourselves and how can we provide a better service for the public. And actually, I'm not convinced, as valuable as the scrutiny process is, and there's many times where I've come forward with a recommendation, and I've said this all the way along, scrutiny is only as powerful as this assembly allows it to be. And 9 times out of 10, this assembly does not support scrutiny when it comes forward with something. So it often begs the time, and I've found myself a lot of the time wondering, why am I wasting my time on scrutiny? I personally get a lot of knowledge and information out of it, which does help my thinking going forward. But this assembly, I'm sorry, does not respect scrutiny. Let's not pretend for a moment that it does. We have a nice platitude from a minister now and again when it's something marginal, something which they can agree with. But if it's a fundamental different point of view on policy, 9 times out of 10, it's the ministers that will get their way. And this comes back to the very good speech that Deputy Mazek gave earlier, and listing kind of all the different problems, and ties in with what the Constable Sir Martin says, who might be very frustrated about the whole system. But who supports the system? Who are the members allowing this system to carry on? And, at the same time, who elects those members in order to be in the Assembly, in order to allow that system to carry on? So, for as much of those members who might criticise the system or wanting it to change, time and again, those aren't the members that are going to be bringing forward propositions looking to change this assembly, then are they? They're not the ones who are going to be the revolutionaries. They're not the ones who are going to say, right, this is the grand scheme. We've just had a speech from the Senator Green talking about how we shouldn't do piecemeal change. But time and again, when it comes to wholesale change, it's always, this is revolution. And we cannot stand revolution. It must be evolution by slow and gradual change. Because this is the problem which we've always had in this assembly. We find it very difficult to accept wholesale change. So that's why we've had this piecemeal and incremental change over time. And who is to blame for that? It's only members of this assembly. Now, looking back in the day, I mean, again, when the whole thing of ministerial government was established, it was obvious that it was a concentration of power to individuals who knew that they were going to be in the ministerial positions. It was never about being more inclusive. It was an opportunity those certain members of the time saw, brilliant, we can have a lot more influence in the assembly, and actually, we don't need to listen to all of them, because we will have the power, we will have the decisions. Now, you might say, Deputy Master, you're being a bit harsh there. But, let's think about this. Ministers say they want to be more inclusive. Well, wait a minute. Didn't Chief Minister Gorse, when he stood for the position again for Chief Minister, he said, what was he going to bring in? The equivalent of the 1922 committee that they have in the UK. What was that? To allow backbenchers to be able to air views to him as Chief Minister. What's happened to that committee? What's happened to this commitment from the Chief Minister that we're going to be more inclusive as states members? Nothing. Not a single thing. So I'm sorry, I can't believe ministers when they stand up and say that we want to be more inclusive, because when you actually look at the facts, at the evidence, about the actions that they actually bring forward to make the Assembly more inclusive, it doesn't materialise. And again, Senator Green talked about the hospital. Yes, but that was ignoring the shambles that we had beforehand, because states members weren't brought aboard, or enough of them weren't brought on board beforehand. And because we had all the political interference behind the scenes, because we know certain states members didn't want the waterfront site to be the one to be chosen. Yeah. And finally, not quite finally, but another point, looking at our system, one of the moves to ministerial system from the committee system, and wait for this, one of the reasons for it was to make members more accountable. The point was you knew who the ministers were, you knew who made the decisions, instead of having the argument of the president of the committee of the day saying, oh, well, actually, I wanted to do this, but I was held back by my committee and I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So this was right, you were the minister, you were the one making the decision, you were the one that's accountable. Now, if you went out there and spoke to the public and asked them, do you feel that the system now is any more or less accountable than it was, I don't think anyone's going to say that actually we feel the system is more accountable, and that's part of the reason why we changed it, or why it was changed in the first place. So, again, it's not really where we need to be. And actually, I'm going to support Deputy Martin, and the reason for this is because I want to see the ministers out there. I want to see them arguing why the system is so good, why it's so inclusive, why it's delivering for the public, because at the moment, I'm not one of the ones who can stand there and say that. Now, don't get me wrong, there are some ministers who are doing some good work. There are a lot of ministers that care about what they're trying to achieve. I'm not going to take that away from them. I believe that most members who come to this assembly are here for the right reasons. But I don't believe that the system, as it's structured, is delivering for the public of the island. One other point to view the points that Deputy Mezit put out and the ones that Senator Green put out. Yes, our system, it doesn't work for some people, and it does work for others. And any political system will do that. There will be those who win from a system and those that don't. But the question which we need to ask ourselves is, does our current system provide enough wins for those people that we want to look after? We know from the Reform Party they're very much about kind of the more vulnerable in society, although of course they'd add, we care about the middle earners as well. Whereas of course we have different sections of society who we know are there to support the other spectrum of society. And of course all aspects need to be represented. That's good and proper. But certainly I feel someone who always tries to kind of represent those in the middle ground, the ones who are squeezed, the ones who are targeted with health charges, etc. I don't feel that they get the representation that they certainly deserve in this assembly. And I don't see how this system that we have is actually going to improve the situation. And so we've had other members saying, oh, how awful it is that we don't know what an alternative might be. Well, unfortunately, unless we have the public turn around to say, we actually don't like this system, we're never going to get that rocket to change, are we? Because you'll always have those other members say, oh, well, we've not had it for long enough. Oh, well, it's the individual members that are the problem. No, it's as much as a systemic one as it is the individuals who are there, as are the electorate who put them there. And maybe we talk about the problems about a low turnout within the island. Well, maybe if we had a system which allowed an elector to vote for someone who they believed would have much more influence or some influence in how decisions are made on this island, they'd be more likely to engage instead of the situation where so many members are kept out of the decision-making process, or by the time it gets to a decision, it's a fait accompli. That's not good for the public. That's not good for the people that I represent. So no, I feel that actually we do need to give the electorate a chance to give their verdict on this system, which they never had in the first place, as Deputy Martin has quite rightly said. And if they endorse the system, fair enough. That'll be an interesting debate. And that's for them to decide. But as I stand, this system does not provide best for the public. It certainly doesn't provide the ability for the talents of all states members across the Assembly to actually deliver their full to the island. And therefore, simply staying where we are how is that a way forward? How are we going to deliver something better to the public in the system that we've got? For me, that's not an answer, and therefore I think Deputy Martin has provided us with something which will help take us forward, and that is something which she should be congratulated on, and I will be supporting her today. Thank you, sir.
Deputy Bree.
Thank you, sir. I have sat through this debate getting increasingly concerned that members of this Assembly have not quite read the proposition correctly. I've sat through at least 2 party political broadcasts. I have sat through
We only
people...
have one party, so as far as...
Please continue.
Sorry, Does the senator wish me to give way or not?
I'm sure he doesn't.
Definitely not, sir. Thank you.
Well, I would ask the senator through the chair, sir, possibly not to interrupt when other members are speaking and afford us the same courtesy that we afford him. As I was saying, sir, before I was rudely interrupted, the point about this is not whether we believe in ministerial government. The point about this proposition is, bearing in mind the increasing voter apathy, disconnection the public have with what actually happens within the States Assembly, and the general feeling that we are, most of us, getting from the public that they are not entirely happy with the system of government, we should ask them the question. And it is not a question to be scared of. It is a very simple question. And if you firmly believe that ministerial government is the best way forward for this island, then you would hope for a resounding support from the public to that effect. And it is actually more about, whilst we are elected representatives of the public themselves don't very often have the opportunity to voice their thoughts and concerns. Whilst we try to listen to our constituents, it is more important, I think, with something like this, that we do actually go out to the public and say, do you support ministerial government? If the answer comes back a resounding yes, then we continue as we are, but obviously always look for ways to improve the system. If the answer is no, then we start work on looking at alternatives. This proposition is not intending to propose anything other than a referendum. It is not the place of this proposition to propose anything other than the question that will be put to the public. Should the answer come back that the public does not wish to continue with ministerial government, then we, as their elected representatives, work together to find a solution. The problem we have at the moment is the public are not seemingly content with the machinery of government we have. Now, that could be a vocal minority, or it could be an overwhelming majority. We do not know. Because the only time that the public can actually voice their views is at election time. And we need to get this question answered before the next election. Yes, there probably will be a lot of work required should the answer come back the public wish to change. But to say you cannot support this proposition because it doesn't offer a solution, I feel that members are missing the point completely about what this proposition is. It is not here to offer a solution. It is here to pose a question. Now, it may well be that some people are scared of the answers. I would suggest that we need to listen to the public of the island more, and this is one way we can do it. As to the question of ministerial government is good, it's just the people in it that are wrong. Well, I'm sorry, we are all elected representatives. To suggest that it's a personality problem, not a system problem, I think is missing the point completely. It doesn't matter whether you like somebody who is in a particular role or you dislike them. What matters is whether the system provides and works for the public. Not for the States Assembly, but for the public. We have all suffered, I would imagine, going round at election time, facing that awful apathy, that awful distrust of politicians, that awful, why should I bother to vote, nothing's going to change. well, perhaps we owe it to the public to go, here is your opportunity to change things if you want to. We're not saying here's the alternative, because we don't know what that is going to be yet. Everything needs to change on the one hand, or everything needs to stay the same on the other hand. It is not our right to dictate to the public what system of government they will have. It is not our right to have decisions being made at ministerial level without referral back to the elected representatives. Perhaps ministerial government does need to change. Perhaps ministerial government does need to be more inclusive. Or perhaps we need another system. This is our opportunity to actually go back to the public of this island and ask their opinion. There is nothing wrong in that. That is what we should be doing. As an elected body, we should be seeking the opinion of the public, because we are here to serve the public. The public are not here to serve our own agendas. And if we fail to gauge public opinion or to take public temperature, whichever phrase you care to use, we are letting down our electorate. It is not up to Deputy Martin to come up with the solution to all our problems, irrespective of how much certain ministers seem to be suggesting that she should have come up with this wonderful panacea that's going to solve all our problems. That is not the point. The point is, do we as an assembly wish to talk to the public? Do we wish to represent the majority public view? If we do, then let us support this proposition. If we don't, then let us be honest about that and go, no, we know best, we're not going to go back to the public. The only time you, the public, can change anything is at election time. And as we know, with our the turnout we have at elections is abysmal. And that is because the public do not feel connected to the politics and government of this island. They do not feel they have true representation. They do not feel there is the right leadership in place to take forward their thoughts and concerns. That's why we have low turnout. And that is why we need to show the public, show the electorate who voted for us, that we are willing to listen. And that is what all this proposition is saying. It is not a debate about whether we think ministerial government is good or bad. It is not a debate about whether we think the committee system was good or bad. And I think, unfortunately, some of the members who have spoken in this debate have attempted to lead the argument in the wrong direction, to confuse the issue. It's a very, very simple proposition. And if you fail to support it, then unfortunately the message that you are sending to the public is, we know best, we're not willing to listen to you. That is why I urge members to think very seriously about how they are going to vote on this proposition. Thank you, sir.
Any other member wish to
Could I have a
speak?
point of clarification, please, sir? The Deputy said the referendum would be before the next election. I'm sure he means on the day of the next election.
My apologies, sir. Yes, I meant on the day of the election. Thank you for the correction.
Deputy St. Warren.
Thank you, sir. I think it's true to say that Deputy Martin's proposition reflects frustration that is out there with the work of the Council of Ministers and the way that the Council does work. Now, I have a note that Senator Farnham told us that work is underway in the reform of machinery of government, but Isn't that typical, it seems to me, of the Council of Ministers? We weren't told what work, what is happening, who is being consulted, just that work is underway. Who's doing it? Who's doing it? Yes, that's
so on
right.
the point of order, if I may, I do believe it's PPC and not the Council of Ministers who are undertaking.
I'm not
Well-
sure it's a point of order.
Yes.
If I may say so, it may be a point of information, and frankly, I don't know the answer to that.
So may I be of assistance? And just as a point of correction,
That is.
I did actually say that I understand work is underway exploring a number of options on how this might be delivered, and I understand that discussions, as other members have mentioned, have been had by the Chief Minister and Assistant Ministers.
I'm not sure I'm much greater informed.
No, sir, well, it was just a subtle correction of the misinterpretation of my comments that the Deputy made.
You may be no wiser, but you're better informed.
Yes, thank you, sir. But, okay, if we're led to believe that something is going on, but I'm sorry, I apologise to the Assembly, I did not know that anything was underway. I've sat in this Assembly for 2 years, I've been elected by parishioners of St. Juan, and I would have hoped somebody might have come to me if views were being sought about how this Assembly works, how government should work. And I'm afraid to say that communication has been poor, very poor in some cases, from the Council of Ministers. Communication to states members, communication to the wider public. And there can definitely be improvements. States members, backbenchers, would want to assist, would want to take part in ideas to improve the way we work. We've heard ministers and assistant ministers talk about wanting to be inclusive. Well, I feel we'd like to see some evidence, some practical outworking of that. So clearly there are faults. We've heard many critiques of ministerial government, but what is the remedy? But here, I'm afraid I have to disagree most strongly with the previous speaker, Deputy Bree, because I have read the proposition, and the proposition uses the words whether they agree that the States Assembly should continue with a ministerial form of government. But that seems to me to beg the question. Okay, should we continue? Okay, if not, then what? Then what? And I think it is irresponsible to put half a question to the general public. It's suggested that if the answer was no, there should be no continuance of Council of Ministers, then the matter comes back to this Assembly. So we've given the public half an issue and we've kept back half the issue. Is that once we have decided on some other sort of alternative, is a suggestion that it goes to a further referendum? And what would happen then if that was rejected by members of the public? This is a recipe for chaos, surely. This is a recipe for asking ill-thought-out issues. A referendum should have a clear result. And unfortunately, to ask whether something should continue or not does not produce an answer that is at all helpful. This sort of exercise would take years to resolve, and we'd be subject again to members of the public saying, well, we're talking about ourselves time and time again at just the same sort of period in which we want to engage members of the public on electoral reform. What a confusing mix to talk about the machinery of government and electoral reform together. So, superficially attractive that this proposition is, I'm afraid I cannot give it my support because of the uncertainty that results from asking that sort of question. And for those reasons, I'm afraid I cannot support Deputy Martin. Thank you, sir.
Does any other member wish to speak? Deputy McClinton.
Thank you, sir. I think I'll say something reasonably shocking now. Ministerial government does not work. I'm an assistant minister. In its current form, it is patently not working, or we would not be having this discussion, would we? I heard it said recently in this assembly, which just basically sums up the frustration, we are not a rubber stamping exercise for the Council of Ministers. And I can understand the frustration in some quarters. And when I'm in this assembly, I'm sometimes shocked at the personal attacks on the Council of Ministers, personal attacks, because the frustration surely is with the system as it stands. The system's not working. The people, the members of the Council of Ministers, are by and large good people trying their best in a system which was voted for by this assembly, which we always seem to forget about. And yet again, this assembly has turned in on itself and it is navel-gazing yet again, because this is about really members of this assembly wanting to feel loved, wanting to feel useful, and not feeling useful. So, to utterly throw the baby out with the bathwater instead of looking at the system and adapting the system, which is what we need to do, to make it more inclusive. The suggestion has been made by Senator Balash that, yes, maybe assistant ministers serve on scrutiny outside of their area. There could be more cross-pollination, maybe more assistant ministers. Maybe, I don't know. People say, no, yeah, well, the system we've got right now doesn't work, does it? No. So we have to come to some sort of consensus for a system that does work. Now, I don't know if that's the answer. We need to do some work on it, is what we need. We need to make sure that more members of the Assembly are involved with the forming of policy. We need to do that. But suggesting that the system we've got right now doesn't work, and looking back with rose-coloured glasses at the old administration, I love that. Yes, Deputy Bree. Shock horror probe. The public aren't happy with government. Oh, that's never happened before. No, this is brand new, this is. Oh, wakey, wakey. This has always been the case. It's the public's job not to be happy with government. That's why you have elections. So that is not what this is about. This is about some of the egos of some people in this assembly who want to feel more involved with policy. Fine. Work on the system that makes that possible. And if anything, I'd like to thank Deputy Martin for bringing this into this assembly, so just maybe we can shake up the system, make people more involved in the machinations of government. But what this is a bit like saying, yeah, my car needs a service. Oh, yeah? Yeah, so I'm going to get rid of it. Oh, why? Well, you know, what's the point? It doesn't work, does it? Oh, what are you going to do? Well, I'm not going to buy a new car because cars don't work, do they? Yeah, you just got to fix it. And also, this proposition does nothing more than ask people what they don't want. Let's not kid ourselves. Please tell us what you don't want. It's a bit like being in a pub, going around your mates and saying, I'll get the drinks in. Oh, yeah, okay. I don't want creme de menthe. All right, yeah. Oh, and I don't want sherry. Oh, yeah, and I definitely don't want Advocaat. I hate this stuff. Going up to the barman and saying, yeah. He says, yes, how can I help? What do you want? I haven't got a clue. I know what I don't want. I suggest we reform the system so that we know what we do want. That's the way this should go, and so I wholeheartedly, although I do appreciate the fact that this proposition has been brought before the Assembly, I wholeheartely would suggest that you vote against it, and then we can actually make sure that the system is reformed. Thank you.
Any other member wish to speak? Deputy St John.
Thank you, sir. I feel like I have to speak after that last speaker with regards to let's again review the system. So I've been in the States Assembly for, 8 years now, and I've been on both machinery of government reviews. Both times we've tried to make changes, both times we've tried to improve it. Every time you try to improve it, somebody has a brighter idea or a better way of doing it or a more informative way of doing it, or power gets in the way, or even better, egos get in the way. Deputy Martin is asking us to ask the public whether they believe ministerial government should continue. The problem is that the public, I don't think, realise how ministerial government works, for one, but two, the former speaker just mentioned that the public vote in the government. They don't. They vote in the Parliament. The Parliament vote in the government, and we're supposed to hold the government to account. The problem is you try to hold the government to account, and, well, let's look at it. Over so many years, I have tried to work as hard as I can in terms of scrutiny to hold the government to account. Numerous recommendations. Deputy Lewis mentioned before about PAC making recommendations to Treasury. Well, Treasury might accept those recommendations, doesn't mean it'll actually get done. And that's why we're constantly going around in circles, following each other's tails all the time, sir. Constantly, because if you notice, if we picked up all the recommendations that have been done previously, you realise the work that we're doing again is probably going to make the same recommendation we made 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago. The fundamental point in all of this is that we find it fundamentally difficult to work with each other. Why? We're humans. We live on an island. You know, compared to America, compared to the UK, it's a pretty small place. We can speak to people on a daily basis. Okay? Our problem is we don't listen. That's our problem. And we can blame each other all we like. I can sit here and blame the Chief Minister, the Treasury Minister, the Environment Minister, the Education Minister till the cows come home. But it's not going to get a result, a solution for the people. And no matter what decisions made, we're going to find issues because guess what? We're all human. It really frustrates me when ministers try to blame one side or the other side tries to blame ministers. We're all responsible for making this system work. And we are. And it's not about personalities, Deputy Bree. It's not about personalities at all. Because if you work in a place of business, you will come across people that you don't necessarily like, but you still need to work with them. And that's what we should be doing. Ministerial government doesn't work because it's actually supposed to be for a political party system. We don't have a political party, well, we have a political party, but we don't have a system of political parties. I'll just reconfine that. And we could, as states members, we could all join together and make up our own little parties and come in and, you know, become the government and be all those adversarial, just arguing with each other, shouting at each other. And really, are we going to get anything done? Are we just going to create more bureaucracy? Are we going to create... So why not ask the people of Jersey what it is that they want to do? Do they want ministerial government? And the solution can come later on. I mean, we've got to learn from the things that are going on around the world, surely. If you don't listen, look at the things that have happened. You've got Brexit. You've got President-elect Trump. You've got these types of things happening in the world. And yet we sit here and we're all trying to keep our little cosy numbers amongst us and making sure, you know, there is so much backstabbing that goes on in this role. Instead of just confronting the issue, facing up to each other and dealing with the problem. And we empower a culture of blame on each other. Why? We're all responsible. We're all humans. I'm going to support Deputy Martin. I'm elected by the public to represent them, to do a job. When it comes to constitutional reform, we love talking about ourselves. We really do love talking about ourselves. I mean, I've lost count the amount of hours I've sat in the States Assembly talking about ourselves. So I want to ask the public, ask them, see what they think, see if they know what they want from their elected representatives, because they manage to do it every 3.5 years now, and they've got the elected representatives that sit in here and make the decisions on their behalf, whether it be tax, whether it be health, whether it be education. But that's one of the fundamental issues. We don't have those big policy debates in this States Assembly. We don't have those big policy issues debated together. Backbenchers get blamed for looking at specific little micromanagement issues, but the ministers are just as bad at it. And so when we're talking about big policy issues, we're talking about what kinds of systems we want to achieve, what kind of future, what kind of society we want to achieve in terms of developing the policies. And I've got to the point, I've worked on both sides. I've worked as an assistant minister. Look at the good that did me. I've worked on scrutiny. I've worked as assistant minister of education. I try to work with all members, and I still try to work with ministers. As a backbencher, I'm on 2 scrutiny panels. But, we all need to work together, and it's not happening because it's too easy to walk back to your office or walk downstairs into the comms room and forget that this ever happened. And I think that's the biggest issue that we've got to learn from this. And I would suggest that people support Deputy Martin's proposition purely because I want to know what the public think, how they feel about ministerial government. We've never asked them whether they want ministerial government. We came into this ministerial government with a Clothier report. We've had numerous reviews. And we're just going to continue asking for review after review until it tells somebody, whoever it may be at this point in time, who has the power, to make the decision to change. So I'd ask members to support Deputy Martin, as I will be doing. Thank you.
Any other members to speak? Deputy St Peter.
Thank you, sir. And I agree with the Deputy of St John that we are, and also the previous speaker to that we are falling into a little bit of navel gazing. But I actually think it is important for us to share our views of the state of play and the state of things to come and how we see that the public see ourselves. Because as Deputy Andrew Lewis said earlier, I think there is a bit of a communications problem here. And as a former media person myself, I think I'm probably well placed to say it. And I think actually from the Council of Ministers perspective, we sometimes play things with too straight a bat. We actually want to get out and tell people about what we are doing and what we are thinking and planning to do, rather than getting into the nitty-gritty of political talk. And this debate is a really good example of that, because actually what we have going on here is a couple of counterintuitive arguments that actually contradict each other, sir. One major argument put forward today is that members say ministerial government is actually costing the public more because there's been an increase in the civil service. Then another member comes along and says, actually, the Council of Ministers don't know what they're doing. So, sir, I ask the Assembly, if the Council of Ministers don't know what they're doing, yet they're being assisted and served by an increased and bloated civil service who are telling them what to do, what exactly is the truth here? So I see, and I have to say, like the previous speaker, I've been on both sides of the fence. I've sat on the Chairman's Committee as well as the Council of Ministers, and I see things in a slightly different perspective. The Council of Ministers are a group of elected people. They've been appointed to their roles by this Assembly. They've been elected by the public, and we have all taken our public duty very seriously. We're all here for the right reasons and trying to do our best for our community around us, and with the long-term interests of the island at heart. We are assisted by a very professional civil service who has recently, and over a number of years actually, been subject to serious efficiency programs, to the extent that actually they're quite strapped. And that takes us back to the communications issue, because actually we have to make decisions about what we communicate about, because we don't have a larger resource to tap into, to say, oh, let's spin this argument or let's spin that argument. Actually, we're focused very much on telling people the essential things that we have to do, because we are focused on our policy objectives and our business, and that is all we have the resource to do. So Deputy Mezek rightly asks, how do we restore faith in politics in Jersey? It's a very important question. And so I would suggest to the Assembly that the best way to do that is to stop using divisive language. And we sometimes fall into that because certain groups are promoting their opinions and trying to gain traction. But let's think about what really is the truth and what really is the situation that we're dealing with. And I think the public can generally see through these arguments because they are very savvy and they have seen it all before, generally. So there is a way forward, and I don't really think there is a lot of support for this movement. But what I could suggest is that a possible way forward is that we abolish the Troy rule, because if members wish to see a greater inclusivity, then that is the barrier to that inclusivity, because if it wasn't for the Troy rule, then we would be able to have more assistant ministers who are involved in policy making and ministerial governance. Slightly controversial, but it is worth putting out there for the Assembly to consider. And so, sir, I think members will have understood that I cannot vote for this proposition.
Any other members wish to speak? Senator Joseph.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to apologise to the Assembly for not being in the Assembly first thing this morning. I will be answering questions shortly, but it's relevant to the point that I wish to make. I am elected, like everybody in this Assembly, to serve the people of Jersey, of which I have done so with pride. Like other members, I've done so for 17 years. Other ministers, other members of this Assembly concentrate on different areas of responsibilities. Some on representing their backbenchers in big constituencies and important issues, the constables for their parishes, and some ministers. Scrutiny serve in a very important role, and I'm going to come on to that. My work, sir, is to ensure, if anything, that the income line that Jersey is defended in terms of the income to protect our income line, jobs and growth, which are at the heart of what this Assembly wants to do in terms of spending money to provide services to keep taxes low. And I'm sorry that I was working late in London last night, and I, unfortunately, because of the M25 this morning, didn't make it over to the Assembly this morning. I always take my responsibilities to be here seriously, and I have to get up at very early in the morning to do so, but it's a pleasure to serve. But on this occasion, it didn't work. But I am here as soon as possible. And I would also suggest, I did see the Chief Minister yesterday in the London office, and I know, and I would echo the comments, it is unfair for members to criticise the Chief Minister, I think, with respect, for not being here. He is defending Jersey with his counterpart in Guernsey, in Brussels. And if there might be any doubt, sir, of the absolute earthquake of change that is underway across Europe and how we may be affected, members will understand that he has a duty to ascend this Assembly to do whatever he can to also represent Jersey. And I do in my role in terms of the jobs and growth agenda that I am charged with. So those people who have brought this proposition, and Deputy Martin, I should first of all say that Deputy Martin and I are apparently a member of a subcommittee of PPC looking at standing orders. And I think the proposition has been lodged. And I thought that subcommittee was being effectively looking at the system and how it can be improved, not to simply completely throw it out and revisit it. I find it extraordinary that, and I've joked with Deputy Martin that we're a committee of two and she's got the presiding and she's got the casting vote, that we haven't actually had a discussion of PPC about this. And PPC, it may be questionable, it may be a reason at the time why PPC was responsible for bringing machinery of government in. And I don't know whether or not she could just nod to me, sir, whether or not, I think she was one of those members who originally did not actually vote in favour of bringing in ministerial government, as I recall. I think that's the case. Yeah, I thought that was the case. So it is quite important that one puts that into context. There are some people who never and will never agree with a separation of ministerial versus non-executive power. I've heard a lot of things. I listened to some speeches and immediately on landing at the airport, and I listened on the radio. I heard a litany of everything that is wrong with this island. And maybe it is because I spend apparently so much time outside of the island, and I bring so many people here to the island, that I perhaps have a perspective that I don't understand. Not everything is right, but my goodness me, if any member could point to another jurisdiction of 105,000 people that is enjoying the economic resurgence and the economic success and the financial stability that we have, I'd be pleased if they could tell me. Not one single one. And if I may make a regrettable comparison to our neighbours in Guernsey who have moved back to a committee system. And I note with interest the fortunes of their finance industry. I wish it was to be different, but I can't help but think that actually this Assembly and those people who serve it, both in this Assembly and in the other Assembly, do make a difference. And I thank members of this Assembly for actually getting it right on so many important issues. Not everything is wrong in Jersey. Not everything is bad. Some of the members that have voted, that are basically wanting to vote in favour of Deputy Martin's proposition, I've heard them. They said that the finance industry would be dead. They said we would be finished. Well, today we've got more people in the finance industry than we had in 2007. And we are the only offshore centre of our size that is in that same position, and we are growing. And I was pleased to be able to open the Gaspé House, the Royal Bank of Canada building, where the chief executive of the global group came over. That building can take 1,000 people, and they are not growing. They are not making that sort of investment if they are confident in Jersey. I was delighted to see the announcement last week after a bitter fought.
Sir, could I raise a point of order, please?
It's very relevant to the
It's
point.
a point of order, sir. I believe that this is round about the third time we've heard this speech, and he's talking about a lot of things that have not even the slightest relevance to the proposition that's before us. Should we not be asking members to get back onto subject?
Thank you, Deputy. I rule against you. What sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander?
So let me turn to the exact real reason why I'm raising this. I say that the people that are opposing, the opposition for ministerial government, is from a group of people that appear to have a set of grievances. They have a set of grievances that they've always held. They've got discontent. They are fueled by now a world in which has a view about the so-called political elite. This political elite which has been punished in the United Kingdom because of the Brexit vote. They've been punished in the United States, and they've been punished elsewhere. And what happens elsewhere in the world washes across to us here. And maybe we are a political elite. Maybe we do not communicate. And maybe the Deputy of St. Peter is absolutely right, and other members to say that we are not communicating. And I agree. But the moment that the Council of Ministers suggests that we actually have to spend any more money on communication, on explaining, we're told that we're spin doctoring, and that's wrong. And we then get criticised by the media even more. I'm afraid to say that Jersey is different. It is not right to say, with the benefit of hindsight, apparently there are people in this Assembly, and the people that are going to be apparently supporting this proposition, they apparently know the future. They apparently have the benefit of the future now, and they certainly criticise with the benefit of hindsight. Nobody does. So we know what works in democracy. We know that it is pretty well free markets, I'm afraid to say. I know that some people don't agree with that. Some movers of most of the people who spoke against it, I can see Reform shaking their heads, but I know what they think about free markets. I want, effectively, an open democracy with lots of people with as much money to spend, with an open democracy promoting social mobility, moving everybody, not people born into a situation where they are glass ceilinged. Getting everybody, social mobility, up and away from the limitations of their apparent roots, giving opportunities for all. And how do you achieve that? How does democracy, translated through a parliament, translated through a parliamentary system, achieve that? Well, of course, it is government's role to pass laws, to raise taxes and run services. It's the perpetual challenge of all parliaments. The problem is, sir, is that it requires some trial and error. And a number of members have spoken about criticism, and Deputy Valois spoke, I think, and I agree with her. I can't understand why she's voting in favour of this proposition, but effectively, finding the right solution, especially in a small place where everybody knows what's going on, is a matter of experimentation. Now, experimentation means that sometimes you get it wrong. Opponents then basically blame you. And it's fair enough to say that they blame you and you should be stand accountable. In the committee system, you never knew. I was in the committee system, sir. Nobody can tell me that a committee system and a move away from ministerial government is the right form of system. Does Deputy Martin not remember? She was here. I used to sit next to her as a deputy. Does she not remember those days when the committee system was at work? Which must be, of course, the opposite side of this referendum. There is no way that you can say that you're going to say yes to ministerial government and then say, well, what is the opposite? Now, I know that there's some movement in the middle, and there certainly should be some evolution in the middle. Of course there should be. But the committee system was, frankly, a nightmare. I worked in it. And those people who look back with rose-tinted spectacles have got barnacles on them. They are the people. I know that. I worked in the committee system. I worked in the system which actually failed to actually deliver any savings at all until 2000. Until 2000. And the Deputy of St. Peter is quite right when she says that there are some unpopular decisions of the states of the states because we're cutting back on expenditure. There's been 3 rounds of expenditure cuts. The most important was the CSR, which was effectively taking 65 million pounds out of the cost base. And it's only because of the coordination of ministerial government that actually allowed efficiency. So I was looking back to the Clothier report, and it's all very well for people to forget what was in the Clothier report, but actually the Clothier report is actually very revealing. And Deputy McClinton said, quite rightly, if you actually look at the paragraphs of it, if you actually look at it, if you actually look at what the problems were, there was a Murray poll. There was a Murray poll back in the end of the Clothier report, which basically said people were totally dissatisfied with the system of government. The proceedings of the public, and there was a number of recommendations in it. We recommended, they said, we remarked that change is uncomfortable, but basically they said change has to happen. The Murray poll effectively said people were discontent with the system of government. It didn't work, it was too slow. There was a general dissatisfaction with the current membership of the government. Most residents think the state lacked leadership, and it takes too long to make decisions and has too many committees. Well, they were absolutely right. I inherited a number of committees. I inherited the Environment and Public Services Committee. I don't know why they merged that lot. It was the most toxic poison chalice that I've ever seen. It was a toxic challenge of a planning committee that had passed an island plan with the wrong numbers for rezoning homes for people that needed it. And I had to clean that one up. And public services was caught. It was spoken about as what's yellow and sleeps 5. Well, that was efficiency, wasn't it? And then there was discussions about, at the Public Services Committee, having long discussions about whether or not the grass should be basically lawn mowed on one way or the other. Absolute nonsense. I sat in committees and it was incoherent nonsense. There was no, you couldn't actually, it was like a slippery eel. You couldn't actually work out who was responsible. It wasn't one committee, it was actually numerous, and committees used to communicate by act. You used to send an act. What a great thing to do, send an act to another committee. To sit on the Industries Committee and they sent an act to the Housing Committee. What a waste of time. What an absolute nightmare. And where would this island be if we wouldn't have changed the system of government? I mean, we talk ourselves down, and I'm sorry if I've misrepresented reform, because my good friend, the Deputy Chief Minister, has said that actually Reform are not supporting this proposition. So I apologise. I didn't know that. So I withdraw that. So I'm pleased to say they're supporting it. That's true. They're not supporting it, but they did criticise the whole system of government. They did criticise what the government was actually doing. I'll give way, certainly.
I think it's fair to say we didn't criticise the whole system of government. We criticised the current incumbents of the government.
Well, that's called democracy, sir. And that's fine, because I've been on election platforms with a number of members of Reform, and there's been election results. And some of us have got in, and some of us haven't got in. And actually, what Clothier was about, we talk about the issue of cherry picking. If ministerial government isn't working, it's because to some great extent it was cherry picked. It was watered down. It was made not to work. It was almost set up to fail. It was said that there wasn't going to be a government in that sense of an executive. That doesn't mean to say that the members of the Council of Ministers are any better than anybody else in this Assembly. Everybody in this Assembly is equal. But there are some people that are charged with responsibility. And with responsibility comes accountability. And accountability was brought in 2005. You can nail the individual because you know who's made the decision. And you can also nail, and there's much comment about civil servants. I think civil servants are given a huge amount of criticism unfairly. But of course there will always be problems. And there is a new system that was brought in 2005 called accounting officers. And that's what Deputy Andrew Lewis, presides over on PAC. Holding accounting officers who are personally responsible for the implementation of policy. Now that is what works in democracy, and it needs to work. And I agree at the moment there's some blurred lines. And I certainly agree that there should be more to be done. Of course I would like to do so much more. Of course I'd like to have lower taxes and not to have to do the two lots of CSR that's happened. And the Treasury Minister with the Chief Minister and Council of Ministers has led the last set of savings. But we are being a responsible jurisdiction, unlike others. I was speaking to a very senior economist yesterday who again said, isn't it amazing that Jersey is actually tackling the healthcare of the future? The UK government is simply not doing it at all. They're putting it off. And they had a referendum on Brexit. Well, fine, the people voted for Brexit, but did they really know? Did they really know what they were voting for? Of course they didn't. It was, on both sides of the debate, it was largely a fictitious argument, and there's going to be no winners. But we have to live with it. And what I would say that we have to live with is now an increasingly uncertain world. And putting a referendum which is going to basically say, do you know what, actually we might chuck out the whole system of government and start again with a committee system or something like that. What a way to send out a message of stability in a world in which we are promoting ourselves as the stable rock of granite stability. Come to Jersey because you know what you've got, because you've got a good, effective democracy which is improving. Yes, we're going to bring forward the changes to the reform of the composition of the states. Yes, we're going to make improvements to things. Yes, of course, that's what democracy is about. We are elected to improve things. And if I may say, the one thing that I regret about ministerial government is the lack of inclusiveness of members. I absolutely agree with that. I can see Deputy Martin being completely bored by what I'm saying, but actually, maybe, well, I know I'm not going to convince her, but I'm certainly going to try and convince some other members and tell some members what it was actually like and what the implications of actually sending out a message of absolute uncertainty in a world where we need to be projecting certainty. We can basically, in an unstable world, we are the granite rock of stability. And sending a message to having a referendum on what system of government we're going to have, I'm afraid is just about as destabilising as it gets. If members want to stand at the ballot box, either in alliances or political parties, and propose a different form of government, then people will elect them on that mandate. If there is a requirement for the people of Jersey that want political parties or alliances, then they will call for it. We'll know it because we'll be listening. And I certainly think that we should do a lot more listening. And the one thing I will say with scrutiny is this. I was disappointed to hear Deputy Bree's remarks. I know he can be fairly caustic at some times, and he can be quite critical. But I actually think that what he's doing with me and what his panel is doing with me in scrutinising my areas is scrutiny at its best. And I'm trying to actually get that scrutiny panel and my department to be an exemplar. So you have said about the importance of scrutinising legislation, something which is being very importantly missed. I think what Deputy Bree is doing in his committee and the assistants, and I actually spoke to him on the telephone, I'm sure he doesn't mind me saying, and I'm not buttering him up, sir, I actually think that he made a real difference with the scrutinising of legislation, doing the right thing. Now, could that have happened on a committee? Could that happen with Deputy Martin's move back? Because this is what we're talking about. We're moving back to the committee system. You need a separation of functions. We had a debate, sir. I know this is not an issue for debate about the separation of the judiciary from politics. Well, actually, that's not an issue for today.
Yeah, you're
and
right.
you're above politics, and you are certainly being you are above. You are not here as a judge, sir. You are an independent chair, and you are chairing this assembly as usual in a completely independent way. And I thank you for that. But there is an issue about the segregation of duty of members. Members who are executive members and those who are non-executive. And you cannot get that if you are part of a committee and a club. You are simply not going to get that challenge. Deputy Bree gives me challenge. I compliment him for improving 2 or 3 bits of legislation. My department actually are relishing the prospect of going to him to go and actually test their policies and talk to him about them. They have officers' meetings with him, and then he grills me in public, and they should be televised. By the way, that was a Clothier recommendation as well. Bring the people in. Open up democracy. There's so much more we can do to basically make ourselves more relevant to the public. People who are blessed to have eyes and ears should not only hear us, but they should see us, and they should see us at work. And this actually assembly, and I'm proud of the fact that I have been doggedly pursuing the issue of bringing the cameras into the States so that they can actually remove the mask and actually see what goes on, actually see people debating the things that matter to their lives. And what matters to their lives is about the things that we should be discussing. We shouldn't be throwing out the system of government that we've got or suggesting that we're going to hurl it out. We should be working on improving it. We know the system of government of work that works in most jurisdictions. We're no different. We're not the United States, and we're not a small island of 10,000 people. But a segregation of duties between 2 types of politicians of equal value, of those who actually are in the executive and those that challenge the executive, actually is what makes democracy work and improves policy determination. Sir, I am a proud Jerseyman. I am proud enormously. It has been the most enormous privilege. I never imagined that I would be serving the interests of Jersey and representing Jersey for as long as I have. And I hope that I would continue to be able to play some sort of role in the future. And all of us here are here to serve the interests of Jersey. And I will say this, and finally, do we think the interests of Jersey are served by sending out a message of the instability of the way that we govern ourselves at the next election? In a world which is in absolute turmoil, there's an earthquake going on in the world, with an uncertain Brexit, with an uncertain relationship to transatlantic arrangement, with other threats as Russia and all the rest of it, and all these other issues. We have been for generations a place of stability and certainty. And that is what we should be. We don't want revolution, we want evolution. I know the system of ministerial government can evolve to be better, and communication is part of it, engagement is part of it. And I thought actually that involved evolution was happening with Deputy Bree's panel, who's doing a great job of holding me and my respective responsibilities to account and making a difference. I urge members to decisively basically reject this proposition so we can get on and start dealing with the real issues that matter to people, improving their lives, social mobility, providing services, improving and preparing for the long term of Jersey, not navel-gazing and looking at ourselves and thinking that this is the system that that's actually going to change it. It isn't. It's actually getting down to the issues properly in the right structure. And ministerial government is around the world the system that works.
Thank you, sir. And that speech gets better every time I hear it. That's the third time now. But there was one element of reassurance in there, for which I'm most heartily grateful, that accountability is in the system, so that whoever's responsible for losing £700,000 on log filler, I intend to hold to account for it, whether that's a civil servant or a politician. And I hope I manage to do that. But that at least focuses on the problem that we're discussing today, which much of that speech didn't, which is accountability. The problem we have is that ministers are not accountable to us here. We can't seem to hold them to account. And they are certainly not accountable in any way whatsoever to the voting public outside. The voting public outside cannot choose, does not choose, is unable to choose its own chief minister. It's unable to choose its own ministers. That's the reality, or assistant ministers. It doesn't choose the government, it chooses a set of individuals who spin the same yarn every time they show up on the hustings. One of, what are the words here? Certainty and stability. What does stability mean? It means holding on for grim death to 20% tax rate. It means protecting the wealth in our land from proper full taxation. It means 10 million cuts for those who are worst off on benefit. And the anarchist in me wants to vote for this proposition. I want to kick over the apple cart and say, to heck with it. Let's change. Let's change. But change for what? Change for what? There is no clue on there. Let's stop doing what we do today and hope it works out. And the anarchist in me thinks, yes, it couldn't get any worse, could it? Ah, well, maybe it could. Listen to Senator Balash, and he talks about cutting down the numbers of members in the states, reducing democracy, and then sharing out assistant ministers to double up doing some scrutiny as well. That's no answer. I hear that the Constable of St. John talk about, in the same breath, talk about how we were told not to cherry pick Clothier, but then extolling the position of the constable in the States when Clothier said, whatever you do, you can't work with 3 types of member. You're going to have one type of member. And it's also interesting that the amount of emphasis that's been put on apparently the only alternative to ministerial government, and whilst I'm here, who invented ministerial government? Who brought it in? Under what form? A committee did. Committee brought it in. So there's no answers necessarily in committees. And where I do agree with Senator Ossoff is that committees tended to go their own way. They were no more accountable than our ministerial system, particularly. The only difference between a ministerial system and the committee system was the committee system leaked. So stuff would get out. You'd know what they were thinking, because it would be gently leaked out. When you've got 8 people around a committee sitting round, you can almost guarantee that one of them will have a little word with so-and-so down the road, and all of a sudden it'll go out via St. Martin and come back from St. Juan completely changed sometimes. But they did leak. And they also tended to be inconsistent. I mean, I was on the Home Affairs Committee when it was being operated by a female senator. And I would certainly walk away from a meeting thinking we made decisions on that, that and that. And that's pretty clear to me. That was unanimously passed. And then a week later, I'd get the message come round, oh, hang on, that and that is now this, and the other. Because the chief officer of police had got into her ear and gave her a little chatting to, and policies were changed like that with nobody there. Doesn't work that particularly well. And then you also had the playing politics with the committee system, and the classic of this nature was Senator Shenton, Dick Shenton, who used to regularly, in the run-up to an election, elections at the end of the year, come Christmas, he'd be on the front page of the Post. And he would pick a fight with a committee and say, what you need is me. And in accountability terms, at least you know where he stood. He said, I will put myself up for this committee, and I will do this with it. And in terms of accountability, he was more accountable than what we find today. The nearest we've come to it is Senator Green. Go Green in 14, as I well remember. I can't get it out of my head. He said, I want to put myself forward as Health Minister, and I will come back to you within 100 days with my proposition for a new hospital and a new system.
Will the deputy give one?
No, let me finish my line first, and then I'll apologise to you if I got it wrong. £5 million later, and something like 712 days later, he's coming today with the proposition for the siting of the hospital. But at least he tried to be accountable. Vote for me, and you may well be voting for a Minister of Health who will make things happen. Sadly, he didn't quite manage it. So yes, I'd like to be able to support this particular proposition. Unfortunately, I can't. And the worst bit of I can't is it's about a referendum. And we've just seen the horrible mishmash, the horrible bath of lie piled on lie piled on lie in the Brexit referendum. I mean, it was shameful the way people... Are we going to see a boss touring the country parishes with £350 million a day to the EU? Or the equivalent in Jersey? Maybe a tractor even, with a shorter message on it, with slightly smaller numbers, but nonetheless. Because without a ministry of truth to establish any truth, any grain of truth in any statement made, a referendum goes to the bottom. Least common denominator, it seems to me, is what wins. The bigger lie you tell, the more often, the more effectively you do it, you promote it, then that's what sways opinion. And that, for me, at this stage, at this time, I can't support.
I'm sure the deputy did say he would apologise if he quoted me wrongly. He did quote me wrongly, sir. What I said was that I would come back within 100 days, having reviewed the two-site option. That I did. Unfortunately, it's taken me a bit longer to find the alternative to the two-site option.
If no other member wishes to speak, I will call on Deputy Martin to reply.
Thank you, sir. And it's been a very interesting debate, and I've been accused of being bored. I was actually sitting there in amazement to some of the speeches and the relevance, and when I looked round, so you had your head in your hands. So I think, it wasn't just me. But now I've got to sum this up, and where am I? I will mention some individual speeches because they are too good not to. But let me just say the people who actually got it were Deputy Bree, Deputy Masson, the Deputy of St John's, the Constable of St John's and Senator Ferguson. They absolutely got what this is not and what it is. A very simple request, a referendum to the public. let me go back to, before I start, Clothier. Clothier panel reviewed and interviewed 130 witnesses and had 160 written submissions. And then there was a Mori poll. I think that covered 1,000 people. They didn't all reply. So that's where the most public input into going to ministerial government ever happened. So I'm listening, sir, today, and I started writing down Senator Farnham said and Deputy Mesick said, and then there's themes, sir, running through this. There's a theme of how dare Deputy Martin, the audacity of Deputy Martin, come here today and say, let's go and ask the public. Now, it is a yes or no question. Do you want ministerial government to continue? Now, the presumption of everybody spoken against me is that the public will say no. There's not one speech that thinks the public will say yes. How bad is that? So then, why would I bring alternatives? Oh, I'll get the office workers in my back office, shall I, to bring up the policy? I'll get who? It's me, and only me. Where are the amendments? All of you criticise. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Not one amendment. Not one amendment. And it was funny with Senator Rosev coming in late, sir, and automatically presuming the Reform Party, and now have all speaking because I said the 2 members, now it's the 3 members of Reform, said this is not the right way in respect to what I'm doing. Well, what way? I mean, they've tried the Speaker of the House, the STV vote. That really got them a long way, didn't it, sir? No support from this council, and this is how it will continue. It continues on and on. The Councillor of St Martin's and Senator Rosev, which really peeved me, mentioned I'm on PPC. And how dare I? Bring a backbenchers proposition on a referendum to about ministerial government? It's mad. Do people really understand what PPC are? They are the servant of this Assembly. We decide what we ask them to work on. And yes, I am working on a revision of standing orders with Senator Rosev, and we've gone out to every member in this House to ask them what they want us to look at. We don't go off and do things on our own. When it comes the day that if you sit on PPC, you can't have your own opinion or bring backbenchers propositions, the day I resign. Or is that the next thing coming from this council minister? Because it's been a theme running around the STV vote, the bailiffs vote. Senator Farman stood up weeks ago and went, oh, and that Deputy Martin, she's bringing a referendum. How dare she? She's on PPC. What is going on? I am elected by the people to look at the system. But I get accused of not coming up with an alternative, again, with all my workers. But why would I? I mean, we've had Deputy McClinton, the Deputy St Peter, Deputy Mesick, Deputy Tadia, Senator Farnham, Senator Ballas, Senator Rudia, Senator Green, and of course, everything about ministerial government, Senator Rosev, have all stood up and give you an alternative. It's going to be better. It's going to be more inclusive. We're working on it. Oh, there's a big pot of jam coming down the road tomorrow. Well, I'm sorry, not today. No way. How dare they stand up and do the job on the cuff, do your research, bring an amendment, and then we might listen to you. I want to go back to Senator Green. When he was deputy and he stood up speaking in the place of the Chief Minister, he said he couldn't actually remember why he brought an amendment or what he brought an amendment to when it was a straightforward yes or no question on the constables. Well, I'll tell you what it was on. It was on a year and a half's work on PPC. PPC's 118. And I'll read out the question. This is all it went out, there's pictures here, they asked questions on vote JE. We actually got it passed in 2013. It was only 22 votes to 21, and PPC were told to go back, bring the question back, and it was going to go, this is what was going to go to the referendum after lots of research, changes to the membership of the State Assembly are being proposed from 2018. There would be a single type of elected member to the States Assembly. 49 members would be elected. The allocation of the seats within the parish districts would be proportional to the population. Should this proposal of a new system be introduced, box yes or box no. Straightforward. That was thrown out by 2 pages, brought by Senator, he was then Deputy Green, who said, and I must quote this, I constantly hear the electorate don't want constables in the States as automatic right. Equally, I hear the opposite, that they should be in the States. The truth is we just don't know what the electorate want, and we have to ask them. Therefore, I would respectively suggest it's time we did it. In my opinion, that is by asking only one clear question, and we had the question, do the constables remain in the States, yes or no? Throughout all the work, sir, that was done, and research with focus groups, much work, Deputy Masson's nodding, we went out there, we really, really consulted. And that was the question, and it was an independent question as well, thrown out on a whim. So today, sir, I'm standing here and I'm like, where have all these people gone off? I am saying, and it's straightforward, my proposition is, I've took the question out because I was told the question was leading. I mean, we're having the principle. Do we put a question to the electorate? And the electorate are either, I've heard the electorate don't understand, the electorate will never understand, the electorate will always vote no, the electorate. Please remember, as Deputy Bree so eloquently put it, these are the electorate who put you and will put you either back in your seats or not in 2018. You treat them with contempt at your own ignorance, really. That's the only word I can think of it. The people absolutely understand. The people, I am asking a very, very straightforward question. Do you want to continue with ministerial government? And there will be a campaign for the yes, and there will be a campaign for no. That's exactly how all the other referendums have worked. There was the A campaign, the B campaign, the in, keep the constables in, get the constables out campaign, and there will be another campaign. You only have to pass it today. That gets to me, oh, the public are fed up, we're nays or gazing again. We're talking about ourselves. No, actually, I'm not. Do you think if I could actually do this without coming here to get a question put on the ballot paper when we have an election in 2018, I wouldn't have done it, sir? Of course I would. But this is how we do things. There's always a challenge, could be amended, it never happened. Could be a challenge, there's a better way forward, never happened. And that goes back to why would I come forward with an alternative when I don't know what the public are going to say. We all seem to know. We're all actually, it's quite frightening for me that most members, well, every member of the council has spoken, are too frightened to put this question to the public. What are they actually scared of? I mean, Senator Ossoff's done the State of the Nation's speech. Everything, sir, about unbut this. You know, he's been there, he's been on both sides of things, but actually 3 sides, sir. He's never been on scrutiny. He's been in committee and he's been in ministerial, but he's never been on scrutiny. And he's now glad that Deputy Bree is holding him to account. He should have been held to account, sir, many, many years ago. Real account. And then, oh yes, and I can't forget the speech, there's a few I must bring out. Say the Constable of St Peter. Scrutiny are their own worst enemy, he said. Their demise is in their own hands. They put things the wrong way. What is he talking about? But he's lucky because he's now an assistant minister, sir, and he's got the ear of his minister, so he can go trotting along and he can say to him, have you thought of doing it this way? Or could you put it to the policymakers and the masses of civil servants you also have behind you and ask if this could work a better way? Easy, because he's the assistant minister. He's got foot in 2 camps as well, sir, so he's got the ear of 2 ministers. It's a great system, sir, an absolute great system. As I say, if you're in it. Loads of talent here, and I was disappointed with the speech of the Deputy St Ones, because I think he's great. He has a lot of talent. Again, he thinks he's not not the time to ask the people. But I don't know when the time is, sir. I really, really feel that we have come to the point, we went down this road, something I read, and I read it when I was researching this. Yes, and it was me, sir, researching this. I couldn't get all my office workers to do it. Or my policy maker or my PA, they were having the week off, actually. I wish. Really, really, come on. So we're here, and I really think it's so straightforward that we have never asked the people. Oh, that's it, sir. I read somewhere, before Clothier panel, the Policy and Resources, what's Policy and Resources Committee, sir, had decided something was wrong with committee system. Something didn't work, and there had to be change. They didn't know what changed, but something had to go. And then they appointed this steering committee, Clothier, and they gave them a steer. It's been cherry-picked. It will never, Senator Oser is convinced that we will have a new system of electing the government by 2018. I'm on the same committee. I'm not privileged to be on that subcommittee. But we've all been to the press the buttons, and we were sitting next to somebody who's actually not got a seat next time, and they go, oh, didn't realise that meant that. Well, there's only too many ways you can cut that cake now. You've said you want to keep the constables, so this is where it goes. Sorry, so I'm now digressing, which I've accused other people of doing. But it's so hard to keep to the very, very simple. You have faith in the public to put you in here every 3 years. It will now be every 3.5 years. You've never, ever had faith in the public to go to them and say, this is the system of government we are going to have. You didn't do that then. 16 years later, and somebody said, well, why is she doing it now? Because I have waited 16 years for an improvement. I've waited to see it get better. I'm watching it get slowly worse and worse, as if it could, but it has. It really has. And I was on committee. From 2001 to 5, they cut the committees down. I was on a fantastic education committee with the Deputy of Greville, Deputy Bernstein, Deputy Fox, myself, and then I'm not sure, bless him, if he was then Senator or Deputy Vibert was the chair. And it worked fantastic. We actually introduced a nursery refund in the private sector. We did do things. So I don't know, maybe Senator Joseph was one of those obstructive people on his committees, because he was shouting about that they never worked or never delivered, but I assure you they did. But today, sir, is not about that. It is straightforward. You've all stood, the people have stood up, they've invented a new system. We've been promised much more inclusion because it's not working. Senator Rucci has said it, Deputy McClinton said it, so-and-so, we all said it. Senator Joseph, that was not right, it's not quite right, but, we're going to get better. And just one more thing, and I will finish here, sir, the Deputy of St Peter. I think she missed the point about communication, because all the statesmen was asking that you communicate with each other, with us, not the public at large. So her excuse, sir, was we've had to sack some of the communications officers because we had to make some cutbacks and we're not getting our message out there. Well, actually, getting your message in here first would be one result. Look, the Deputy of St Ones didn't even know any of this was going on. And he's on the Chairman's Committee and he is the chair of a scrutiny panel. So all this inclusive. If nothing else today, sir, we've got the ministers to admit it doesn't work. They want more inclusivity. We don't know how that's going to look. We do know that somehow I should have come up with some massive Clothier report all on my own, and they would have been happy then. Quite happy? I don't think so. I had to avoid an or go back to, because I would have been hung on that, sir. Find out, go to the public, you're going to them in 18 months' time. Anyway, it will be a massive election issue. You either make it a proactive one, where there's a yes and a no campaign, or you make it a destructive one, where there will be people like me going around and saying at the senatorial hustings and the deputies and the constables, you know, these people, this person or that person who's now standing up for your vote, wants you to vote for them, actually did not trust you enough to decide what sort of form of government you are wanting and actually are entitled to. because I will, and so will others. And I bet these who are not supporting me behind me, Reform will do it with relish as well. Because they know in 18 months' time, and now, it is the people out there who decide. It's the people who should have been asked 16 years ago before we went down this road. We cherry-pick Clothier, we have a mismatch, we have power here concentrated in 10 hands with massive, massive policy makers and civil servants behind them. And you will never, as good as scrutiny is, hold them to account. So if that is the system you want, that's all right for you. You've got to ask the public and explain it to them and then see whether they still want that system. It's very simple, sir. I maintain the proposition and I ask for the appeal. Thank you, sir.
The appeal is called for and invite members to return to their seats. The vote is on the Ministerial Government Referendum Proposition, Deputy Martin, P94. And I ask the referee to open the voting. If all members had the opportunity of voting, I ask the referee to close the voting. I can announce the proposition has been defeated. 12 votes in favour, 29 votes against.
Of the 12, please.
Referee?
The 12 are Senator Ferguson, Constable St Saviour and St John, Deputy Martin, Deputy of Grouville, Deputy Kevin Lewis, Deputy of St John, Deputies Higgins, Mason, Labby, Bree and MacDonald.
We have a 29 against 30. No, who was here?
Senators Routier, McLean, Farnham and Green, Constable St Helier, St Clement, St Peter, St Lawrence, St Wan, St Brelard and St Martin, Grouville and Trinity. Deputies Southern, Deputy of Trinity, Deputy Talier, Noel, Pennell, Deputy St Martin, Deputy Bryans, Deputy St Peter, Deputy Rondell, Mesick, Andrew Lewis, Deputy St Wan, Deputy Norton, Deputy St Mary, Deputy Truscott and Deputy McClinton.
Well, returning to the agenda, can I just inform members that in some of the speeches on the last proposition, there was confusion about the note which appears on the agenda as to whether it referred to the draft United Nations financial sanctions law or the future hospital preferred site. And that misreading was one that I did with the greffier when I was looking at the note. We both agreed actually we're going to change that in the future, and the notes will now appear below the proposition in question. So that I hope will be the natural way to read it. The P110, the future hospital preferred site, cannot at present be debated until tomorrow. So we will take next P112, the Greville Bay Fund.
Are we not asking questions?
We were going to have questions, but unfortunately Senator Joseph's not here.
So I'll go see if I can find him.
Well, that would be helpful. Deputy Chief Minister, thank you. In the meantime, perhaps we can go to P112, the Greville Bay Fund appointment for Jurat. Ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The States are asked to decide whether they're of opinion to approve the appointment of Jurat Roseanne Barbara Thomas and Rosenthal for the purpose of administering the income of the Greville Bath Fund.
Assistant Minister.
Thank you very much, sir. Before moving to the proposition, sir, I believe it would be useful for members to understand the purpose of this generous fund. The late Mr. Greville Inverness Bay bequeathed assets to the Treasurer of the State of Jersey for himself and his successors to be held in trust, known as the Greville Bay Fund, for and on behalf of the States for the following purposes, as detailed within his will dated 9th of October 1961. And I quote, "The income of the fund should be available to distribute as grants for relief to sick, aged and needy individuals of either sex whose legal domicile is the island of Jersey, and for support to local charities whose objectives are the same as the Greville Bay Fund." Examples of the grants awarded are those to assist Jersey residents struggling with their rent, nursery fees for children, assistance to families whose children attend hospitals in the UK so that both parents are able to go, etc. Each applicant is sponsored by a professional person, for example, a doctor, health visitor, social worker or a similar professional, and completes an application form on their behalf. The will express that the administrators of the fund should be 4 persons resident and domiciled in the island of Jersey who are not members of the States Assembly, and would prefer those appointed by the States of Jersey be jurats of the Royal Court, as they are non-political and have been elected by an electoral college established under the law. The Greville Bathe Fund also supports local charities whose objectives are the same as the fund. Recently, these charities have been invited to apply for grants for a specific use. In 2014, for example, a total of £399,000 was awarded to 20 local charities. 2015, a total of £460,000 was awarded to 25 local charities. The Trust Jurats held a meeting on the 26th of May this year to discuss the awards to local charities for 2016. It was agreed that a total of £403,000 will be distributed between 28 charities this year, sir. Moving to the proposition itself, sir, I'm seeking members' approval for the appointment of Jurat Roseanne Barbara Thomas, née Rosenthal Jurat Thomas, to oversee the Greville Bathe Fund. Jurat Mrs. Susie Marriott Crosby is retiring from her position as a trustee for the fund. I'm seeking members' approval for the appointment of Jurat Thomas with immediate effect to replace Mrs. Susie Marriott Crosby. I can confirm this appointment is supported by the fellow Jurats overseeing the Greville Bathe Fund. Jurat Thomas possesses integrity, common sense and patience, were essential qualities for this role. I'm sure she will make a valuable contribution based on sound judgment. I hope all members will therefore support me by approving this appointment. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank Mrs. Susie Marriott Crosby for her time and service to the Greville Bathe Fund that was given enthusiastically and freely. So I move the proposition.
Proposition seconded. Any member wish to speak? Senator Ferguson.
Right, thank you. Yes, one, I think it would be helpful if the accounts were attached to such a proposition, sir. And the other thing is that the proposer mentioned, the Assistant Minister rather, mentioned that the fund provides relief to children. Now, according to the noting, the rubric of the proposition, it says sick and aged persons. I wonder if the Assistant Minister would clarify that.
So I note the...
Any other member wish to speak? Then I call on the Assistant Minister to reply.
Too enthusiastic, apologies, sir. With regard to the actually having the accounts attached, that'll be noted for the future. I'll read again, if it helps the Senator, the quote I made earlier on. The income of the fund should be available to distribute as grants for relief to sick, aged and needy individuals of either sex whose legal domicile is the island of Jersey, and for support to local charities whose objectives are the same as the Greville Bathe Fund. And those objectives are also for children, sir. Thank you.
All members in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show. Those against, the proposition is adopted.
So I'm assured the Senator is on his way, but I just wondered if we could deal with the Appointed Day Act in the meantime.
We come to P114, the Draft Roadworks and Events Jersey Law 2016 Appointed Day Act. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
Draft Roadworks and Events Jersey Law 2016 Appointed Day Act 2000, the states in pursuance of Article 71 of the Roadworks and Events Jersey Law 2016 have made the following act.
Minister.
Thank you, sir. So the Appointed Day Act before us today is the first of two such acts and is in principle intended to commence the Roadwork and Events Jersey Law 2016 road event provisions, notably parts 12 and 13, in time for the 2017 event calendar, sir. A second and final act will be brought to the states in 2017, along with the secondary roadwork legislation, to commence the law's remaining roadworks provisions once supporting administration arrangements and new codes of practice are finalised, and this should be due around mid-2017. The Roadworks and Events Law, which was unanimously adopted by the states on the 20th of January of this year, was drafted with the aim of creating a lean administrative tool. This act will commence an important simplification to the means by which road events such as the Battle of Flowers, hill climbs, etc. are legally enabled on public roads with their associated temporary traffic changes. This will replace the current system of event orders administered by my department, which involves some 19 administrative stages and takes up to 3 months to prepare in each case, with a simple system of discretionary licensing administered directly by the relevant highway authority, be that my department or by an individual or a group of parishes. However, the law will also allow my department to delegate its own road events licensing to the parishes in relation to particular roads or events where to do so would be a better fit, sir. And this is where we have effectively a state's road we can pass over by discretion for an event that to the parish to administer. This would be in particular to events carried out in St Helier in the town centre, where it would be more beneficial for the parish under the direction of the constable rather than my own department, sir. My department is currently in dialogue with the parishes to identify which road events events in 2017 and beyond might be best licensed at a parish level. We're also working with colleagues from EDT, S&C to ensure that they continue to have appropriate involvement in events that take place on our beaches under the legislation, and in particular I'm referring to the sand racing series, sir. In all, this is aimed to simultaneously remove the unnecessary administration costs and to make the whole process quicker, more flexible, and to serve the island's community, sir. And I maintain the act.
Seconded. Any member wish to speak? All those in favour of adopting the proposition kindly show it. Those against, the proposition is adopted. Now, St Joseph, is it convenient to take questions now?
Apologise, sir. I was taking an urgent call. Yes, of course.
Very well. We'll come first of all to question
5. Sir.
5. Order paper.
Thank you, sir.
Deputy Southern will ask of the Assistant Chief Minister.
Will the Assistant Minister provide the written report submitted to the Jersey Innovation Fund Board resulting from the full economic assessment conducted by the Economic Advisor regarding the log filler proposal as required by Section 8.1 of P124 of 2012 as amended, and if not, why not?
Thank you, sir. I apologise again for not being able to answer questions earlier. I can confirm that an economic impact assessment was completed for log filler, as was the case for all applicants to the Innovation Fund. However, the document is commercially sensitive, as members will be aware, and that was provided to the States for economic purposes, and the States does not have an ability to publish this information without the permission of the applicant. It's for these reasons, therefore, that certainly at this stage, that it's not possible to release the information in the public domain.
Supplementary.
Sir, as I understand it, log filler has disappeared off the island, and I cannot believe that presents a commercial sensitivity sufficient to withhold what is a report made by one of our employees about an investment made by one of our departments into the economic future of the island. Surely that must be capable of being released.
No, I'm afraid, as much as I would like to do so, it's not. But what I can say to the Deputy is that there is a review being undertaken by both internally by my own department, and as the Deputy is aware, log filler isn't finished, it is in liquidation, and that process is a legal process which continues and which the state retains all its rights. The log filler issue it would be wrong to comment on something which is not yet finished its process, and as and when there can be appropriate release of information, together with all the issues in relation to the Innovation Fund, I will do so, but I certainly cannot release. And of course, the Deputy asks for the economic impact assessment. That is, of course, only one aspect of the economic impact assessment. That's only one aspect of it. The economic impact assessment is about jobs and other matters, but there are a whole load of other issues in relation to every applicant that once that report is, it's obviously confidential, but when that report is issued at this time, it will prejudice Logfilla's creditors, Logfilla's interests elsewhere, and I just simply can't be drawn on on the situation with Logfilla because it is under a process, and the whole of the Innovation Fund and its review is under review by the Controller and Auditor General.
Deputy Higgins.
Thank you, sir. Perhaps the Minister can, first of all, tell us whether it's true that the people or the principals behind Logfilla have left the island, and whether his department knew they'd left the island before they did so. And secondly, what due diligence was done on these individuals before the loan was given?
So I'm more than happy to answer those questions at the appropriate time. But since the Controller and Auditor General, who I saw in the London office yesterday, who was working on the report and has been working hard on dealing with the Innovation Fund report, completes her report, I think it's completely inappropriate for me to make any comments about the conduct or otherwise of my department or any aspect of it, and particularly until the liquidation process itself is completed. As and when that information can be, of course, we talked about accountability earlier, of course accountability must remain, and as far as policy is concerned, that's a political matter. As far as administration, that's matters for the accounting officer.
Supplementary, can the Minister tell us what timescales we're talking to, or will it be after the next election before this comes out?
So the Controller and Auditor General works for this Assembly and reports directly to this Assembly, and then of course it's a matter for her reports to be then submitted and then questioned by the Public Accounts Committee. My understanding is that his best endeavours are being made to release that. Certainly, I'm not going to it's not for me to really to comment to say when her report is going to be made. There was an erroneous media report that said it cost 40,000. It's not. She's doing it within a normal budget, but I imagine it's within the next few weeks. I would hope that that process would be completed by the end of January, if not before.
Clarification, sir. The Minister mentioned originally that the delays in publishing this would also involve the liquidation. So if the Controller and Auditor General finishes their report, will it be withheld until the liquidation is complete? So when will we actually get the full information?
So I know that there is a salacious desire for members to hold people to account for a failure of an innovation firm. And the Controller and Auditor General is not going to be referring specifically to individuals, as I understand it, as she explained kindly to me yesterday, that her report is looking at the processes and procedures of effectively the terms of reference and the adherence thereon. So effectively, no, it doesn't matter about the Logfilla liquidation itself, because effectively she's looking at the processes before that and all the issues about due diligence, etc. So that's completely separate. So her report can be issued. The issues about Logfilla itself and the situation of that company, I remind members again that that loan has been written off completely together with the loans. And again, I'm not going to speculate on the subject of people being here or not, or any other actions that are effectively the state withholds its position in relation to the fund. And until we have that advice and report, I'm not really prepared, and I can't really prepare to say anything, as much as I'd like to.
Deputy Tadier.
Thank you, sir. My colleague, Deputy Southern, asked quite reasonably, I think, that why the application and the full economic assessment could not be released. Does the Assistant Minister agree that the liquidation process is completely irrelevant to that assessment process, and that is not a good reason for not disclosing the assessment which has been asked for?
So, the Deputy might not understand what the process of liquidation is. The liquidation is that the company has effectively decided that it is no longer cease to trade as it currently is. There are creditors, there are clearly maybe assets, and maybe there is intellectual property, etc. So the business case and the ideas at the heart of Logfilla, which must have been pretty good ideas, otherwise they wouldn't have got through the Innovation Fund, are obviously of value. Now, there are going to be businesses that are going to succeed, and those that are going to fail. But the commercially sensitive information about what Logfiller does, as all the other loans in the Innovation Fund, are commercially confidential information. It's called innovation. It's called being first to market. It's called getting something to the marketplace earlier than anybody else and not basically telling everybody else what that idea is. To release that information would be completely prejudicial to the interests of the creditors of Logfiller.
So clearly the ideas couldn't have been that good, otherwise Logfiller wouldn't find themselves in liquidation, which is a concept which I do understand on a very basic level, and the Minister might be surprised to learn. But does he not accept that actually it should be possible, because this is information which is in the public domain, is in the public interest. Taxpayers' money, very significant amounts in this case, has been handed over on what looks like a dodgy gamble with the power of hindsight. And actually, at the very least, the Assistant Minister could release a redacted version. So if there is still commercially sensitive information in there, which I doubt is necessarily the case, that could be released and the public interest test could be met with that redacted release.
So clearly the Deputy has absolutely no understanding of the greatest of respect of how companies work and how innovation works. I said earlier, in an earlier speech, that effectively people apparently know the future with the benefit of hindsight. I've got no evidence of the future, and effectively innovation is about investing in businesses that look as though they have good business prospects. Now those are the issues. I cannot release any information until the process of liquidation is, but I assure the Assembly that as in the totally and proper way, that this information will be properly released as it can be, and there will be all the reports, both my own internal departmental reports, together with the reports that can be made available without breaching confidentiality, and the CNAG reports will be made public. That's accountability. But there is a time that accountability can be made, and it is not at this moment.
Senator Ferguson.
Sir, given the previous instances of poor due diligence in that particular department, and given the public interest in the matter, does the Assistant Minister, not understand that the public is entitled to know why their money has disappeared without trace, particularly when the Assistant Minister has previously said that all the loans from the Innovation Fund are commercially sensitive and therefore questionable?
Sir, I would refer Senator Ferguson back to the Hansard of when this Assembly set up the Innovation Fund. There was no doubt that there was a requirement to basically make Jersey more innovative, needed to reinvent ourselves, needing to find more products and services. The new potato didn't happen by accident. It happened by that one worked. Other things didn't. There's all sorts of innovation. There are some things that work, but apparently people like to criticise. There are many, many successful entrepreneurs. I think of some of the world's most famous entrepreneurs, the gentleman now sadly deceased running Apple Computers, Richard Branson, who have had businesses that have failed. There is Virgin matters that have failed. Just people cast aspersions and say that's bad. We revel in failure in this Assembly, sir. I would remind the Deputy that there's actually lots of innovation in Jersey, and that's why we have a record numbers of people in work, both in terms of business and professional services, and a growing tech sector.
Final supplementary.
Could the Minister, on this particular question, and not specifically and not generally, state whether either the Economic Advisor or the Minister for Economic Development asked the GIF board to commission experts to provide specialist technology, financial or legal advice? Was there any specialist advice sought, and did the Minister seek that advice?
So the Controller and Auditor General is reviewing all of these matters, and it would be improper for me to know for me to basically effectively cut across what I know is a widespread review which is covering all of these issues. And I simply think that it is inappropriate for me to speculate. I have my own views on log filler and the Innovation Fund, and I've made those views known and to my department, and I've made changes therein. Now, I'm not going to speculate on what the CNAG says. I know that she's writing her report, and it'll be published as soon as possible, and then we'll make up our minds, or members can make up their minds as who did what, when, etc.
Matter of clarification, sir. It's not a question of commenting on the Auditor General's findings. It's was any specialist technology, financial or legal advice sought in this particular case?
Yes, of course there was.
Yes or no?
Of the case, of course there was at the time. Of course there was. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been granted.
Welcome to question 8, which Deputy Mesleck will also ask of the Assistant Chief Minister.
Thank you, sir. Will the Assistant Minister inform members why, in his statement to the Assembly of the 16th November 2016, the Assistant Chief Minister described the position of existing loans from the Jersey Innovation Fund as delicate, and state what professional support, now required from Grant Thornton, who are to assume operational management of the loan book, was missing from the original decision-making structure of the fund?
Thank you, sir. The Innovation Fund existed and exists, and the remaining funds exist to deliver growth and improve competitiveness, to diversify the local economy and create employment by investing in innovative local start-up and scale-up of existing businesses that have struggled or would struggle to raise funds from conventional sources. As I noted in my statements of the 14th of June and the 16th of November, what was central to P124 2012, which was approved by this Assembly with full information and a complete scrutiny review, which was very helpful, investment in start-up and scale-up businesses carries risk. When P124 was carried 41 votes to 1, it was acknowledged that some schemes would have a high degree of risk. However, members at the time recognised that the rationale for the intervention would be well-founded. There was huge support for it. There was robust international evidence that market failures prevent genuinely promising businesses from receiving support, and that access to fund programmes such as the Jersey Innovation Fund could improve performance and deliver benefits to the wider economy of Jersey, which of course we are seeing. Members will note that the policy trend is actually further supported by, for example, even the Chancellor of the Exchequer on the 23rd of November announcing that he's putting in place 400 million to support a British business bank and specifically innovation funds. Members will be aware that Grant Thornton have been engaged to support the monitoring and management of the loan book. They are not part of the decision-making process as it relates to the consideration of all applications. Indeed, members will be aware that the fund is now pending the reviews that I have undertaken and that I've started, that now the fund is closed to new applications until such time as we've completed the ongoing reviews and we've actually learnt, and effectively the world has changed as well in terms of credit markets.
Supplementary, sir, I was listening there to see if I could hear a specific and direct answer to particularly the last part of the question that's in front of me. It very specifically asks, what professional support was missing from the original decision-making structure of the fund? If Grant Thornton have now had to be brought in, that is surely an admission that there was something not in place that ideally should have been in place. So can it be open and explain what procedures weren't in place that may have contributed to the situation we now find ourselves in?
So I'm going to refer back to the comments that I made some moments ago. The Comptroller and Auditor General is the right individual to review this. She is basically this Assembly's individual to review such matters and to make any speculation as to what I think, frankly, would be to disrespect the fact that we have a serious professional with huge experience reviewing this whole issue. And I think what she says matters better and more appropriately, and I will comment when I see her report.
Thank you, sir. One of the areas that worried me when I heard the Assistant Minister's statement to the House on the Innovation Fund was he mentioned in fact it was alluded to in Deputy Messick's question, the delicate nature or delicate situation of the other firms. Now, that to me worried me because are they all in trouble? Now, the Minister said at the time he couldn't say too much, but basically using the terminology he did, put the thought, I think, in everyone's mind. Can you reassure us that the other firms that have been received funds are not experiencing any problems at the moment and are sound, or are they heading the same way as Longfellow?
Sir, I recall very well the Deputy's own comments in the Hansard. I'm not giving away...
Sorry. And actually, sir, I will just say, yes, some firms fail. I accept that. I said that at the time. However, we still need to understand why the firms failed, whether it was a failure on our own part.
And, sir, I am not somebody, sir, with the greatest of respect to the Deputy that shies away from tackling issues. I have taken responsibility, political oversight of the Innovation Fund, and no stone will be left unturned in terms of dealing with and making sure that we have the most innovative process. I want no business and no individual that has a good idea, that has a lack of finance, not to be able to create jobs and growth and diversify our existing financial services and business professional services and digital economy. I want everybody to be able to succeed. And the Innovation Fund is the way to achieve that. Other governments are doing it with huge success. And I believe that the Innovation Fund, as was always said, would have a likely 50% failure rate. I am not going to speculate. There will be some of the firms, surprisingly to the Deputy, he knows, well actually he shouldn't be surprised because he said so, that actually some firms will fail. Others will blossom and others will be great Jersey companies of the future. And actually quite a lot of them didn't even need the Innovation Fund because they've had the signals and signposts for the plentiful funds that are in Jersey already because we're a successful finance centre and they've had investments in their business. There is huge innovation in Jersey. We just have to basically make sure that those companies that are unable to get finance get it properly and there are proper controls, and I'm going to make sure that happens.
Sir, could the Minister answer the question about the delicate nature of the existing firms?
So delicate means that by definition, it's not a slam dunk that you can basically get a rock solid guarantee. It's called risk. That's what banking is. That's what finance is. Apparently, the Deputy used to work at the Financial Services Commission. Surely he would understand that banks are about, and the whole issue of finance is about how you basically intermediate cash, you allocate credit according to risk. Now, risk is effectively when you have got an unproven technology, you basically are going to be in a much more risky position. That means risk. But the risk also has a big upside, and the upside is a growing, successful economy such as we're seeing in Jersey at the moment. But we love to revel in the failures.
So we're hearing a lot of spin today, and the Minister's been telling us, or rather Assistant Minister, so I always get confused about that. But on behalf of the Minister, the Assistant Minister's been telling us that, well, of course, these people couldn't get bank loans for whatever reason, because probably their ideas either weren't good enough or they didn't have good enough credit ratings. And the words got out there on the street that you can come to Jersey because guess what? They've been conned a blinder in the past by previous sham film companies who have got good money out of the Jersey government, so why don't we chance our arm as well? Now, the Minister seems to be saying that actually I can't answer any of your questions. I choose not to because the CNAG is looking at it. Does he not accept that actually this Assembly is responsible for holding ministers to account when it comes to policy? That's exactly what we're trying to do here, to see if the policy was being followed. And until the Minister starts giving reasonable answers to this Assembly, we and the public won't have any satisfaction from him, and this matter will rumble on.
So, there is a time and a place for accountability when the facts are known. And the facts will be known after the CNAG. When the CNAG reports and when my own department reviews have been completed. That is when there is accountability and when the facts are known. There has been a huge amount of speculation and frankly outrageous speculation. I've had to endure myself sitting on logs with the wrong number because that number was leaked apparently to some sort of media organisation. That's fine, that's democracy. But effectively there's a huge amount of blame. I'm receiving effectively anonymous letters saying resign. I've seen social media, I don't look at it, but I'm told that there's social media alive with the fact that I'm responsible for wasting taxpayers' money. I would ask members, respectfully, to wait until the facts and they see it. I am not somebody, throughout 17 years in politics, who has shied away from responsibility or shied away from dealing with problems and tackling them. I don't shy away from them, I tackle them head on and deal with them, and I don't want to see taxpayers' money wasted any more than the people answering these questions. But instead of being effectively assisted and encouraged to do the right thing with things, effectively, I, like other ministers, when you see this, when you do have issues, and things will go wrong. Innovation fund loans will be written off. That was said from the start. Basically, you get slated. Well, I'm afraid I'm up for that. I will get slated, but I'll stand up for the people of Jersey and do the right thing, and by tackling problems, sorting problems out, making sure that things are right, and making sure that no business and no individual that's got a good idea has a barrier to finance. That's my job, and that's what I'm going to carry on doing.
Deputy Andrew Lewis.
Thank you, sir. The Assistant Minister will be aware of other development agencies across the UK that also invest in these types of initiatives by taking equity in them. Can the Minister tell us whether any equity has been taken in any of these businesses? And if not, would he in the future recommend that that was a possible way forward? As at the moment it seems lose-lose, whereas if one had equity, there's possible gain as well. Is that a concept that he would agree with and would want to do in the future?
So, as every special fund had to be set up by the Minister for Treasury and Resources, even though it was the Economic Development Minister, my friend, the Economic Development Minister's departmental, I was pleased to be able to bring that forward. And it was said at the time that an equity provision, which currently is not envisaged under the Public Finance Law, was available. I don't recall any request being made to make that change to the Public Finance Law. No doubt that will be forming part of the conclusions. But what I can say is that there are some trigger clauses in the loan agreements which actually allow that provision to be triggered in the event that the businesses, some of which will be, of course, spectacular successes.
Thank you, sir. Does the Assistant Minister accept responsibility should any lack of professional support or weaknesses in the initial economic assessments are discovered by his report?
So, ministers are responsible for policy. Accounting officers are responsible for implementation of political policy and the will of this Assembly. No doubt the Controller and Auditor General will be, and there is obviously a Jersey Innovation Fund board, and there's a range of individuals and professionals that are involved. I take responsibility for overseeing and asking the questions that I ask. And all that is going to be revealed, no doubt, in the CNAG's report. So I'd wait until the Deputy, before he wants to call for my head. I think he said that I should resign, apparently, before. He can do whatever he wants. He's brought votes of no confidence in me before. No doubt he'll do it again. But let's have the facts out before we actually start blaming. And let's not revel in the fact that, unfortunately, one company that obviously had a very, very good idea, because it wouldn't have got past the board, actually failed. And let's actually not cast, we spoke about this Assembly being a blame game place. Well, my goodness me, this is a jolly good example of it. Members knew that some innovation funds loans would fail. This has failed, and now members are, and certainly the media is revelling in the prospect of that failure. Let's look at some of the upside, but of course members don't want to do that sometimes. All they want to do is basically point score and blame game. I'm not playing that game, sir. I'm going to carry on serving the people of Jersey and doing the right thing for the department and putting the right structures in place. And where I'm not satisfied with the departmental structures in place, I'll put alternative arrangements in place. Please wait for the Controller and Auditor General's report.
Final supplementary. Final supplementary.
Oh, another supplementary.
We've had
supplementary, sir, haven't I?
Deputy Southern,
I've asked one question,
Deputy,
sir.
we've had 12 minutes already on this question. I would never have allowed that much.
The final question is, when is he going to report?
Well, okay. So to take what I think Deputy Southern was going to ask is, when can we expect this further information to come out? Because the Minister has said that we have to make decisions on the basis of facts, but question time is used to try and get those facts out so we know what we're talking about, yet this Assistant Minister has simply stood up and not attempted to actually answer these questions so we know what these facts are. As the initial question said, that a process has been put in place which in itself is an admission that there was something wrong before. Why can't he tell us what there was wrong before and what he has done? If he wants to boast about how brilliant the work he is doing, can he then explain to us why he's taken this measure and what was wrong in the first place that he's now trying to correct?
Sir, I have repeated and will repeat again, I am not going to speculate onto the results and the conclusions of the Controller and Auditor General. That is completely inappropriate for me to do so. I have made my views known, The department is aware of my views, and there is a time and a place. I'm afraid 24-hour news journalism and the immediacy that we want to have everything done today means that everything can't be done today, and you actually need to know the facts. Sir, you sit most of the time in a court and you hear evidence. Let's hear the evidence and then we'll make a judgment. I can't really add any further than that. Evidence is needed. That evidence is being gathered by the best people around. Then we'll decide, or then this assembly will decide who's got the right and who's the right and the wrong, and all the rest of it.
Point of clarification, sir. The Minister said there's a time and a place. When will he be issuing his report, the departmental report, and when can we expect to see the Controller and Auditor General's report?
So I can't speak for the Controller and Auditor General and would not seek to do so. I understand that she's working hard on it, and she's trying to, as far as I understand, deliver that report before Christmas. But of course, further evidence is also always available. And I probably even said something that I shouldn't have done. But of course, she's working hard. As far as my own departmental reviews, they will be by the end of January.
We come now to P115, minimum wage, revised hourly rate, lodged by Deputy Mezek. I ask the greffier to read the proposition.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to request the Minister for Social Security to revoke the Employment Minimum Wage Amendment No. 10 Jersey Order 2016, scheduled to come into force on 1st of April 2017, and to take such steps as are necessary to make a new order fixing the minimum wage at £7.20 per hour from the 1st of April 2017.
Deputy Mezek. Sorry, Deputy Teddy?
Yes, sir. Sorry.
Three lights flashing.
Sorry.
Deputy Norton.
So I was going to ask it, given that this is likely to be quite a lengthy debate, I wondered if members would consider an adjournment at this time, if I could call for it.
Well, it's quite early, but it's a matter for members. Those members in favour of adjourning now, kindly show. I'm sorry, can we have the appel? Appel's call for. The vote is on whether to adjourn at this stage. And I ask the greffier to open the voting. If you're in favour of adjourning at this stage, you press pour. That's usually the way Cottage are, isn't it?
So could I just ask the Chair to confirm we are coming back tomorrow anyway, presumably?
If all, gosh, we're still voting hard. If all members have had the opportunity of voting, I ask the greffier to close the voting, and 23 votes in favour, 14 votes against. We will now adjourn. As members will be aware, we're having a formal session at 9:30 tomorrow morning in order to say goodbye to the Governor. There will be a brief adjournment then, and we will reconvene at, I think, 11:15.